Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Pat Lichtman, and I'm Spirituality Trustee on your board of directors of the DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. We welcome everyone this morning to our open and inclusive virtual community. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and pledge to support one another as we explore these paths. We are so glad you were able to find us and join us for our live stream service today. Please check the church website, www.dupageUUchurch.org, for updates. If you search under DuPage UU Church on Facebook, you will find a number of ways to be in community with us as well. Join us for coffee. This morning, please join us for a virtual coffee hour after the service. The Zoom link is in the order of service and on the members tab of our website. You may join us around 11:30, and at 11:45, we will break into small groups of 4 or 5 people, chosen at random. Chat with old friends or make new ones. We hope to see you there.
Today's service is titled Art and Spirituality, When the Imagination Runs Wild. Since the early days of human beings, Art has been used to visualize, investigate, and reify the idea of spiritual forces. From cave paintings to church architecture, the visual arts have helped people to embody what they believe is the spirit, so as to worship, embrace, and sometimes control the intangible. The theme this month is imagination, and few human endeavors represent imagination more than the arts. This service will explore some of the ways the visual arts have supported spirituality historically and how they can act to support us now in our everyday lives.
We
Our
light this
chalice
chalice
will be
for the
lit.
interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part.
And now please join us for hymn number 338, I Seek the Spirit of a Child.
I seek the spirit of a child who meets life naturally, a child who sings the world alive and greets the morning sun with glee. Children are real beyond all art. May I see joy's a gift to our heart. I seek the freedom of a child who loves instinctively, who lights our day with just a smile and shines that light on all we see. Children are real beyond our fears. May I see hope's a gift to our tears. I seek the wonder of a child who sees delightfully, no clumsy cloud, no golden sun, imagination's true and free. Children are real beyond all eyes. May I see faith's a gift to our eyes.
Please join me in the affirmations of our church. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
From all who dwell beyond the stars, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
Now is the time we set aside to pause and reflect on those joys and concerns that affect our world and our community. There has been joy in our nation, and there has been sorrow in many lives. As we pause to contemplate these joys and sorrows, we can take to heart the words of Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. We should remember that we are not alone, that we have our church community walking beside us, holding us in that light, both in sorrow and in joy. We pause now. Blessed be, and amen.
It is time to gather. Our theme this month is imagination, and from our imagination come ideas. My story today is What Do You Do with an Idea?, written by Kobe Yamada and illustrated by May Besum. One day, I had an idea. Where did it come from? Why is it here, I wondered. What do I do with an idea? At first, I didn't think much of it. It seemed kind of strange and fragile. I didn't know what to do with it, so I just walked away from it. I acted like it didn't belong to me. But it followed me. I worried what others would think. What would people say about my idea? I kept it to myself. I hid it away and didn't talk about it. I tried to act like everything was the same as it was before my idea showed up. But there was something magical about my idea. I had to admit, I felt better and happier when it was around. It wanted food. It wanted to play. Actually, it wanted a lot of attention. And it grew bigger, and we became friends. I showed it to other people, even though I was afraid of what they would say. I was afraid that if people saw it, they would laugh at it. I was afraid they would think it was silly. And many of them did. They said it was no good. They said it was too weird. They said it was a waste of time and it would never become anything. And at first, I believed them. I actually thought about giving up on my idea. I almost listened to them. But then I realized, what do they really know? This is my idea, I thought. No one knows it like I do. And it's okay if it's different and weird and maybe a little crazy. I decided to protect it and care for it. I fed it good food. I worked with it. I played with it. But most of all, I gave it my attention. My idea grew, and so did my love for it. I built it a new house, one with an open roof where it could look up at the stars, a place where it could be safe to dream. I liked being with my idea. It made me feel more alive, like I could do anything. It encouraged me to think big, and then to think bigger. It shared its secrets with me. It showed me how to walk on my hands because, it said, it is good to have the ability to see things differently. I couldn't imagine my life without it. And then one day, something amazing happened. My idea changed right before my very eyes. It spread its wings, took flight, and burst into the sky. I don't know how to describe it, but it went from being here to being everywhere. It wasn't just a part of me anymore. It was now a part of everything. And then I realized what you do with an idea. You change the world.
Robert Ferris Thompson. The Yoruba are one of the most urban of the traditional civilizations of Black Africa. Yoruba urbanism is ancient, dating to the Middle Ages, when their holy city, Ifa, where the Yoruba believed the world began, was flourishing with an artistic force that later provoked the astonishment of the West at a time between the 10th and 12th centuries when nothing of comparable quality was being produced in Europe. The master sculptors of the Elifa were shaping splendid art. The Yoruba assess everything aesthetically, from the taste and color of a yam to the qualities of dye, to the dress and deportment of man and woman. One of the earliest dictionaries of their language, published in 1858, included amiwa, literally knower of beauty, connoisseur, one who looks for the manifestation of pure artistry. Beauty is seen in the mean, in something not too tall or short, not too beautiful or too ugly. Moreover, the Yoruba appreciate freshness and improvisation, per se, in the arts. These preoccupations are especially evident in the rich and vast body of artworks celebrating Yoruba religion. In Yoruba religion, God came down to give the world Ashe, the power to make things happen. And from Wikipedia, the concept of the Ashe influences how many of the Yoruba arts are composed. In the visual arts, a design may be segmented or serrated, a continuous aggregate in which the units of the whole are discrete and share equal value with other units. Such elements can be seen in ifa trays and bowls, veranda posts, carved doors, and ancestral masks. Regarding composition in Yoruba art as a reflection of the concept of Ashe, Dural writes, units often have no prescribed order and are interchangeable. Attention to the discrete units of the whole produces a form which is multifocal, with shifts in perspective and proportion. Such compositions, whether representational or not, mirror a world order of structurally different yet autonomous elements. It is a formal means of organizing diverse powers, not only to acknowledge their autonomy, but more importantly, to evoke, invoke, and activate diverse forces, to marshal and bring them into the phenomenal world. The significance of segmented composition in Yoruba art can be appreciated if one understands that art and ritual are integral to each other.
Please join us in singing hymn number 379 in the Gray Hymnal. The words are 379. The tune is 372, the Chalice Canon.
Poems
I would like to thank Lulu Knight for lighting our chalice. Today's service is starting with a short story. A little girl was working on a drawing in her kindergarten class. Impressed by the girl's efforts, her teacher went over to her and asked what she was drawing. Intently focused on her picture, the girl responded, "I'm drawing a picture of God." The teacher said, "But nobody knows what God looks like." The girl replied, "They will in a minute." My homilies today are about some of the ways that human imagination has extended outside rational thought, reached past consciousness, and flown beyond the stars. This way of realizing human imagination has given us ecstatic delight and gripped us with fear. And it has been used to visualize, investigate, and reify the idea of spiritual forces. I'm speaking, of course, about the visual arts. Pat just read an excerpt about the concept of ashe and the art of the Yoruba people, who make up one of the largest populations in West Africa, living primarily in Nigeria. Those people have inhabited this area of Africa since 5000 BC, and they developed a stable urban life since 1000 CE. Like many indigenous groups, the Yoruba do not separate the secular from the spiritual. The spiritual is integrated into everyday life and art. As a species, we are hardwired to make visual symbols. Our brain grows through artistic developmental stages. Then these stages are not fixed, nor are they entirely universal. They are influenced by culture and experience. But they are predictable enough so that teachers can develop and design lessons around them to help students improve their artistic capabilities over time. Most children start out with mark making, such as hitting a surface with a crayon and dragging the crayon across the surface. Children quickly learn that a crayon is not intended to be eaten, but rather can be used to make a mark on the world. Then they begin to make dedicated scribbles, often looking like small circles and windshield wiper marks. These tend to be investigations of the lever of the arm as children learn gross and fine motor skills. One of my colleagues had a child who found a black dry marker and covered her entire staircase wall with a delightful scribble before her mother realized why her daughter was being so quiet. Given the opportunity to draw, children make schematic figures by the time they enter school. The capability to create and use schematic figures enables children to visually represent stories, which supports language development. The ability to make a zebra smile or make forts out of furniture opens up the imagination. You can see the zebra smile in that slide. Michelle Obama once said, "The arts are not just a nice thing to have or to do if there is free time or if one can afford it. Rather, poetry, painting, music and fashion, design and dialogue all define who we are as people and provide an account of our history for the next generation." These stories people tell, the emotions they express, and the knowledge they reveal through the arts are all part of the cumulative human imagination that has enabled science, engineering, medicine, and all other disciplines, including religion. If humans could not draw, life would be very different. Not only would we know less, we would also be less comfortable, because we wouldn't have any of the design disciplines we depend on for clothing, housing, furniture, and so on. All of these had to be imagined, and all required artists and designers to realize those imaginings. With regards to religion, imagination has helped people create stories to believe in, and art has made them real. Often when people hear the word spirituality, they think of organized religion. But today I'll be referring to many uses of the term spirit, and with regards to art. The range of meanings and images of spirit points to the depth and breadth of imagination that has gone into the concept over centuries. Historically, and please forgive the brevity of this history that I'm going to talk about, art has aided religious spirituality in at least three ways: as a form of revelation, to invoke inspiration, and to aid devotion. First, art is believed to reveal the spirit. It has the capacity to make the spirit and the spiritual real. In the past, art was used to show the spirit as people imagine. Some people believed that art represented a spirit guide, and others, like the little girl in the story, believed that art could show us the gods. Imagine why it was important for artists to develop increasingly accurate skills of representation as they made the spirit tangible, something one could see and touch. Through the use of visual symbols, iconography, art brought the invisible, inaccessible spirit to the individual and made it personal. Second, art has inspired people to use their spiritual imagination. The earliest known evidence that people imagine supernatural beings is the recent discovery of a 44,000-year-old cave paintings of human-animal shapeshifters in Indonesia. For millennia, art has inspired people's wildest imaginings and released into the world gods, demons, saviors, heavens, and hells. Third, art has enabled devotion by making ideas of the spiritual special. The human brain can easily become devoted to something it considers special. Art scholar Ellen Dissanayake argues that art is a process of making special. She states, evidence of making special appears as early as 300,000 years ago. In a number of sites from that long ago, consistently thereafter, pieces of red ochre or hematite have been found associated with human dwellings, often far from the areas in which they naturally occur. It is thought that these materials were brought to dwelling sites to be used for coloring of bodies and utensils, just as people do today. The oldest known belief system, animism, is the belief in a spirit-filled world where every living being and non-living object has spirit. It connects all of nature, animals, humans, and objects. Some scientists believe that ancient artists portrayed animals in particular in order to capture their spirits and apply them for some use, such as to protect a cave or bless a hunt. In this Lascaux cave painting, the spirit of a horse is portrayed through the visual qualities of the body. Artists commonly seek to evoke the spirit of people, animals, places, and so on, not necessarily having to do with the idea of the divine, but rather giving form to character. This artist shows us the character of horsiness by exuding energy and galloping or prancing the way the horses do, which causes people even now to appreciate their beauty. In ancient Egypt, culture was fairly stable for a long time, so rules for creative expression existed and were strictly followed. Art reified the spirit of gods, in part through animal characteristics, but the artists were less concerned with showing energy or movement than the power of the form. The ability to suggest power is another connection between art and spirit. Hagia Sophia is one of the most powerful symbols of spirit in Byzantium, now Turkey, and a testament to human commitment to the idea of spirit. Both Christian and Muslim religious groups have held this building at different times, and it includes artifacts older than Christianity and Islam. In 987, ambassadors from a Russian prince sent a report about the mosque back to their home, stating, quote, "We knew not whether we were in heaven or in earth. For on earth there is no such splendor or such beauty. We cannot describe it, but this much we can say, their gods dwell among mankind," unquote. When I visited Hagia Sophia, as my eyes adjusted to the interior light, I slowly came to realize that I was surrounded by a kaleidoscope of colors and patterns, a palatial space, and a magnificent dome. I must have felt the same sense of awe other people have felt for centuries as they stood in my place. Such places of spirit are a testament to art and engineering, which cause people to stop in surprise and then erupt in wonder. Art is inherently didactic, and from the beginning of religion, it has been used to tell religious stories. Early Christians use art to tell Bible stories to illiterate populations. The Rosano Gospels are some of the earliest examples of art showing Christ as a bearded adult, which is thought to have originated in artistic representations of Greek gods. In Asia, Buddhists of all sizes, Chinese ghosts and demons of hell, were prevalent in art. Ancient Chinese and then Japanese paintings were often a spiritual and intellectual journey. However, historical religious art in Asia also represented the art as uncanny, that is, unsettling and mysterious, to shock and sometimes intimidate. But in my opinion, the most awesome artistic period was the Gothic period of European cathedral building in the 12th and 13th century, which gave the world the cathedrals of Paris, Reims, and Chartres. The site of the Gothic-style Cologne Museum in Germany has had churches on it since the 4th century. Its last iteration began in 1248, and its medieval plan was finally completed in 1880. Clearly an example of devotion. When I visited these cathedrals, I came to understand how people living in small surrounding cottages could come to believe in God. For the layperson with little or no understanding of art and engineering, it had to seem as though only the hand of God could hold up such a building. These cathedrals are remarkable works of art, like Hagia Sophia, made up of intriguing forms and patterns that surround and tower over you, seem to whirl and change as you move, and haunt you well after your visit. They successfully do what they were intended to do, bring the idea of spirit to life. The European Renaissance of the 14th to 17th centuries, exemplified by Michelangelo's Pieta, changed the idea of spirit again, making it more personal and emotional. Then during the Romantic period in Europe, art represented spirit as an ideal or intentional concept. It reflected the desire for political freedom, but also for freedom of taste. Artists were thought to have a unique subjectivity, and the path to freedom was the imagination. Many people still hold these views, and certainly the Western fine art community is built on them. Some modern art from 1870 to 1970, such as that of architect Frank Lloyd Wright, have continued the ancient and indigenous concept of natural spirit. And abstract and non-objective color field painters such as Mark Rothko, Barnett Newman, and Agnes Martin sought to inscribe spirit onto the formal qualities of art, that is, line, shape, color, and so on. These artists investigated how formal qualities of art can draw a viewer into a work as a spiritual experience. Since the 1980s, contemporary postmodern fine artists have returned to the use of religious icons and other spiritual elements in their work. For example, Chicago-based artist Kerry James Marshall incorporates African deities and Christian iconography in his paintings. These artists seek to return to and critique the idea of religious spirit, whether natural or supernatural, to inform contemporary life.
The artist Ben Shahn wrote the following: "It is in the nature of today's art to draw upon the individualness of the painter and to affirm the individualness of perception in the audience or viewer of art. The values of art rest in the value of the person. Art today may be as deeply subjective as it is possible for man to be, or it is free to be objective and observant. It may, and it does, examine every possible human mood. It communicates directly without asking approval of any authority. Its values are not those of set virtues, but are of the essential nature of man, good or bad. Art is one of the few media of expression which still remains unedited, unprocessed, and undictated. If its hazards are great, So are its potentialities magnificent. It seems to me that this particular function of art, to express man in his individualness and his variety, is the one that will not easily run out. It may have its low points, but the challenge and the potentiality remain high. The accomplishments of modern art in this individualistic direction are already impressive, of course. There have been quite remarkable psychological probings and revelations in painting. There are a dozen or so schools which one might mention, the Surrealists, the German Expressionists, and so on. There have been the sociological efforts, social realism, and some others. The poetic sense has been brilliantly exploited. We have the love of crumbling ruins in one painter, the return to myth in others. Art has probed the mysteries of life and death and examined all the passions. It has been responsible and irresponsible, and sympathetic and satiric. It has explored ugliness and beauty and has often deliberately confused them, much to the perplexity of an often lagging public. The artist of the Renaissance had no great problems of style comparable to those which plague the young artist of today. He might simply follow the established manners of painting as most artists did. If his powers were greater or his vision more personal, he expanded the existing manners of painting to meet his needs. But the artist today, and particularly the young one, feels challenged to be unique. Such a condition, such a challenge, strikes at the security of the painter. It may sometimes press artists to exceed the bounds of good sense, simply to be different. But such a challenge has much to do with the character and the function of today's art, and despite its hazards, it is also an advantage and an opportunity. Craft itself, one inexorable standard in art, is today an artist's individual responsibility. Craft probably still does involve deftness of touch, ease of execution, in other words, mastery. But it is the mastery of one's personal means. And while it would be hard to imagine any serious practitioner in art not seeking craft and mastery and deftness, it is still to be emphasized that such mastery is today not measured by a set established style, but only by a private sense of perfection. I've mentioned our great American passion for freedom, and now let me add to that the comment that freedom is a disciplined thing. Craft is that discipline which frees the spirit, and style is the result. No one can promise success to an intended painter, nor is the problem of painting one of success at all. It is rather one of how much emphasis one places upon self-realization, upon the things he thinks. I believe that the individual whose interests are measured primarily in terms of money or even success would do well to avoid a lifetime of painting. The primary concern of the serious artist is to get the thing said, and wonderfully well. His values are wholly vested in the object which he has been creating. Recognition is the wine of his repast, but its substance is the accomplishment of the work itself.
Thomas Mann declares, "Art is the funnel, as it were, through which spirit is poured into life." Always remember you are the artist creating meaning in your life through your own hands and deeds. In this church, we work together, helping each other create that meaning in our lives. To keep the spirit of this church alive, we need to continue to be engaged with each other and to understand that, as artists who create this church, we also need to support it. The offering for the good of this church will now be given and gratefully received.
Janstein, all of them giants of shadow and light, but no one was like Vermeer. Some paintings smell of joy and sweat, some paintings plain look so fine. Some paintings are sad and passionate, but Vermeer sends a chill up your spine. Yeah, Vermeer sends a chill up your spine. Vermeer was eerie, Vermeer was strange. He had a more modern color range, as if born in another age, like maybe 100 or so years ago. What's this, a ghost in the gallery? Great Scott, the Martians are here. These strange little paintings next to the others. No one was like Vermeer. Vermeer was eerie, Vermeer was weird. He had his own way of doing things with the paintings from another era, another era.
In my previous PowerPoint presentation for the first homily, we saw ways that older ideas about spirit were represented in the visual arts. Organized religious art has often illustrated the idea of spirit as separated from the body. Contemporary views of the spirit and the body tend to be less discrete, perhaps hearkening back to ancient days. According to theoretical physicist and feminist theorist Karen Barad, our bodies are entanglements. They don't start or end. They are part of the natural mingling of things. The creation of art is an entanglement of human and object. For Barad, the result is, quote, a phenomenon, unquote, similar to the philosopher John Dewey called, quote, an experience, unquote, almost 100 years ago. That involves connecting and reconnecting through our sensory systems, past knowledge, the construction of new knowledge, and so on as we travel through the entanglement. The human aspect of the entanglement is highly creative, which enables our sensory systems to gain access to points of the entanglement never before seen by human eyes. Human imagination is tied to the brain's capacity for visual thinking, which allows people to see the next spaceship, create frighteningly subtle advertising, and understand mathematical data through scientific visualization. All of these visual cultural forms have involved artists and designers who have opened our minds and hopefully, with reflection, helped us to connect to ourselves. To me, this is the spiritual, the process by which spirit is entangled in and enacted through creative practice of all sorts. As author John Updike stated, quote, what art offers is space, a certain breathing room for the spirit, unquote. It can be uplifting or horrific. It can remind us in frightening ways, like the black antebellum silhouettes against white walls of museums by contemporary artist Kara Walker, and it can be the eternal optimism of the brilliant fuchsia and green watermelons painted by Frida Kahlo, on which she wrote the title, Viva la Vida, meaning long live life, just a few days before her death. Research has demonstrated that art making relieves anxiety and stress. It can calm the mind like meditation and release it from its distractions. But it can also excite and expand the mind. I personally have never been able to meditate, but creating a work of art, attaining flow, as psychologist Csikszentmihalyi termed that sense of losing time during the creative process, focuses my mind in both narrow and expansive ways. In 2017, the art critic S. Brent Plate said, quote, "If there is a connecting point between religion and art, it is to be found in the aesthetic, sense-based experiences and effects of the body," unquote. It can help us find our place in the entanglement, our center. Not a center in terms of an egocentric core, but rather more a shifting center of gravity that travels as all things influencing it circle, collide, break up, and reform. Young people's drawings seem to reveal this sense of spirit particularly clearly, perhaps because they don't feel the immensity of the entanglement yet. When children draw, a body can be a tadpole figure and zebras can smile. Even life on other planets can smile. And like contemporary fine artists, they can represent what they strongly believe. This boy painting his skateboard used comics to let police officers know what he believes, that it's safer for him to ride on the sidewalk than the street, which is against the law. He didn't think that the police would change the law, but rather the comics would help them understand why he rode on the sidewalk when they stopped him. I've just finished a research project funded by the National Art Education Foundation in which interviews of almost 30 high school students in several states and that involved the analysis of their artwork about social issues. The images I'm showing you now are from that study. The students and their parents have signed permissions to allow the work to be shown when I spoke about the research. The students in this study did some incredible art about social issues that they cared about. One of several interesting results of the study is that the students tended to understand art about social issues as an expression of their views, to use their voice, but not as a way of influencing other people. In fact, some of the students felt that they were too young to have an influence. They were concerned that the limit of their skills would not enable their work to be convincing. As you can see, this is not the case. The analysis of student artwork is still underway, but it is evident that these young artists convey deeply held beliefs and convictions in powerful ways. That's the great thing about art. Art can capture the spirit of an idea, and that spirit can be remembered and influence viewers regardless of skill. Even the simplest drawing can capture spirit. As author Thomas Hardy once stated, quote, "My weakness has always been to prefer the large intentional work of an unskilled artist to the trivial intention of an accomplished one. In other words, I am more interested in the high ideas of a feeble executant than in the high execution of a feeble thinker," unquote. Recent research has demonstrated that artistic ability engages two cognitive processes often thought of as opposed: the executive control network, which is responsible for selecting and assessing ideas, and the default mode network, responsible for spontaneous thinking. Art making involves continual assessment and decision-making, as well as spontaneity. It is made up of a planning process and an acting process, both of which involve drafting and revision. Of course, if you want to, for example, make a painting that looks like a real person, that requires training, and there are a lot of art teachers and thousands of video on YouTube to help you with that. But anyone with a phone camera can take a photograph of that person in an artful manner. Recent research has also demonstrated that art making is aided by a dedicated studio space. So I leave you with a request. If you don't have one currently, set up an area of your home with art supplies. It can be small, perhaps just a corner. Place paper, pencils, markers, or whatever materials you prefer. Make sure children and adolescents have an art space too. It could be an area of your garage where you save found objects that would otherwise be thrown away. It could include paint, clay, or wood, whatever interests you. Now, think of something you like to look at, or an image you like to imagine. It doesn't have to be real. Perhaps it's something you saw in the past or imagined for the future. Perhaps it is the pink of a sunset, the curve of your partner's cheek, your game avatar, or the rush of football players on a field. Close your eyes now and imagine it. Does it have line, shape, color? Imagine moving your inner eye along a line that is formed when one surface ends and another begins. Study a color. Is it a generic color like the color labeled green in a crayon box, or a complex color made up of many greens? How is the image lighted? If it is in daylight, make it night. What shapes are in your image? Are there circles or a triangle? If not, add one. Add a tree or a person. Add yourself to the image. The wonderful thing about art, that is the thing that enables one to achieve wonder, is that you can create anything, and anything you create can help you find your spirit.
Please join us in singing hymn number 1059, May Your Life Be as a Song. It's in the teal hymnal, and we will sing it through twice.
Following this benediction, please stay and listen to the postlude, which is Viva la Vida by Coldplay, inspired by Frida Kahlo's watermelons that I mentioned earlier. The great modern dancer, Martha Graham, who understood dance as a visual art, said, "There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium, and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. Keep your eyes open and go in peace."